Hey everybody, I'm a member of Al-Anon. My name's Aaron Jacks. My home group is One Purpose Al-Anon Family Group in Charlotte, North Carolina. We meet 8 o'clock Eastern on Thursday nights. We study a step each week, a tradition on the fourth Thursday of the month, and a concept when there's a fifth Thursday. I absolutely love my group. And we're still doing the hybrid Zoom in-person thing. So if anybody's interested in checking out a new Al-Anon meeting, Lance has got my information, and I'd love to give you that link because we love seeing new faces. Thank you, Lance, for inviting me to be here, and Kenzie's not here, but I wanted to thank her for driving me over here. Everybody who's had a hand in getting me here and taking care of me this weekend and putting this thing on, I'm really grateful to be here. Well, I've been asked to tell you in a general way what I was like, what happened, and what I am like now, and I try to emphasize that because this story needs to be as much as possible about me. I do qualify for Al-Anon. My life has been affected by alcoholism and relatives and friends, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But it's equally true that the defects of character that made my life completely unmanageable, and still can today, self-pity and controlling and self-centered fear and overblown sense of responsibility for everything. I don't remember a time that my life wasn't impacted by that stuff. So I usually start out by saying I needed a meeting long before I picked up my first drunk. I'm here because I've got a problem, and I'm going to try to keep the focus on that as much as possible. I was born the oldest of 5 kids in Charlotte, North Carolina, into what was a very loving home. By any reasonable standard, I had a pretty good upbringing, but my standards had never been reasonable, and I was a miserable kid. With that love, all that love always came fear. And it wasn't fear of each other, it was fear for each other. If you loved someone, you were worried about them all the time. Worried about their health and their safety and their well-being. It's kind of how we measured how much you loved someone, was how afraid you were all the time for them. And I was overwhelmed and smothered by that kind of love. I didn't like it. I didn't like that from my mom. And then the other thing that was a big part of my life was, it was a family joke from my earliest memory. Mom has to save the universe. So I've got 4 siblings, but I also had foster brothers would come in 1 or 2 at a time, and I'd have new brothers, and then they'd get adopted, and then I have another brother. And always the homeless people at the table and the sick person in the spare bed that mom's taking care of. And those are not bad things by any means, but being selfish and self-centered from a very early age, I didn't like it. Why is mom giving all these strangers this unconditional love? I wanted it all for myself. What is wrong with me? What am I not doing right? Developed a gift of perfectionism early on, just trying to get it all for myself. We were a God-fearing family in the most literal sense of that term, just terrified of God all the time, and very insular family. There weren't a lot of movies or TV. Got grounded for listening to rock and roll on the radio one time, that sort of thing. And this was just mom's way of protecting us from the devil that was around every corner waiting to get us, but I didn't like it. Overwhelmed, smothered, angry at that love from an early age. Well, my parents aren't drinkers, but it might not surprise you that the one big drinker I knew growing up was my mom's mom. Now, she was the fun grandma, she wasn't the one that made me go to church and sit quietly. She was the one that would sneak me a sip of every beer that I'd bring her at the party and act inappropriately in public, which is a lot of fun at a certain age. Granny's sitting on a stranger's lap at the restaurant. That's hilarious. Why is nobody else laughing about this? And she always acted crazy. She didn't change when she opened that first beer. It seemed like everybody else in the room changed when she opened that first beer. But, like most problem drinkers I've known, she was talented and gregarious and so much fun. But maybe my mom growing up as the oldest child of this problem drinker who was hospitalized in the 50s, maybe that had something to do with my mom learning how to love and learning how to show that love and learning how to take care of people. And I can recognize that now, and I'm so grateful for that love that I had growing up. But I wasn't grateful for it then. We went to a very small religious school, so I was at that church almost all the time, and I was just horribly self-conscious. Al-Anon helped me really look at those words. Self-conscious. It means I'm conscious of me. It means I'm thinking about me. That's all that means. I'm thinking about me all the time. I think you think about me as much as I think about me all the time. And I'm not thinking anything good about me, so I know you're not thinking anything good about me. And this is on a loop in my head from my earliest memories. Through that gift of perfectionism, I skipped 2nd grade, and then I was younger than everybody, and just that social awkwardness got even worse. And then I got kicked out. for nothing in particular. They just got tired of me arguing about everything all the time and being angry and making straight A's and being in the principal's office every day. I couldn't get it, didn't get it, and sent me home. My mom doesn't like to say I got kicked out. She says I was asked to leave, because that's different. So I was asked to leave halfway through 8th grade, and then I was homeschooled for a year and a half, which was horrible for everyone involved in that. And then for grades 10, 11, and 12, they sent me off to another small religious private school that they could not afford. Again, Mom's got to protect me from the evil that's out there, and I can appreciate that today. Did not at the time. And I go in there, and I'm a year younger than everybody, and they're all rich, and we're not. They all have the same haircut, and I don't, and we're in clothes that I can't afford. And I looked around and made a decision immediately, not consciously, but they're going to reject me. I'm going to reject them before they can reject me. I'm going to pretend like I'm different on purpose, that I'm doing this on purpose. So I started growing my hair as long as I could, and bad teenage beard, and just doing everything I could to be different than all these people that I knew weren't going to want to have anything to do with me. So I'm just going full of fear, painfully self-conscious, and I found my solution halfway through that year. She came in halfway through the year. None of her family knew what to do with her. I guess they figured this religious school might be able to straighten her out. And man, that was my solution. I'd never met anybody like this in my very sheltered existence. She was drunk all the time, never knew where she was at, lied about everything for no reason, and I was just in love. I mean, this is exactly what I was looking for. You know, I don't think she was looking for someone to save her, but I know through inventory, I was looking for someone to save. Mom had taught me, without meaning to, that to be a good person, you go out and you find the sickest people you can find, and you hold them down and help the hell out of them, whether they want it or not. And that's what good people do. You don't take care of yourself, you don't think of yourself, you take care of other people. And that filled a hole in me that I didn't know existed until I met her. And she was an older woman. She was 17, I was 15. That was exciting. And we were off and running, and it was insane. It was exhilarating and it was terrifying. But see, now I don't have time to sit by myself and wonder what's wrong with me. I have a full-time job, and that's taking care of her and tracking her down and bailing her out and lying for her. And that's what I do all the time now. And it was so fulfilling. I mean, it was a 15-year-old kid, how good it felt every time I got to to hold her hair while she threw up. Because here's this sick person, and aren't I this good man taking care of this sick person who needs me? I look at 15-year-olds today. I was an Al-Anon sponsor for several years, and just try to imagine that kind of sickness in a kid that age, but I was there. So yeah, it was crazy. And we were still together when we graduated the same year. She was 19, I was 17. And she did the quote-unquote normal thing. She went off to college in Tennessee. I said, I hate school, I hate authority, I hate my parents, I'm never going to college, and I moved out. And so I did. And I did hate it, but again, inventory showed me that was all fear-based. I was so terrified in the idea of going off to a college with thousands of people that I didn't know. No way. No way I could do that. So I said I'm moving out, and so I did. For the first time in my life, I got a chance to choose who I was going to live with, and this is who I chose. 2 guys, well on their way toward probable alcoholism with some other issues thrown in there. And then this 4th roommate, who I'm still friends with today, one of these weird normal people. Not an alcoholic, but also not whatever is wrong with me. And he didn't last very long. Someone rented these 4 17, 18-year-olds a house, and it was actually a pretty nice house for about 4 hours, and then it wasn't anymore. After that, it was absolute insanity. And my friend said, I can't live like this. I mean, I got to get up and go to work in the morning. And I was so angry when he moved back in with his mom. How could he abandon me here with these drunken idiots? Why is it always on me to make sure the bills get paid and the holes in the walls get patched and the cops get talked to when they're here every other week? Why is that always on me? Why can't they get their act together so I can just have a break? And that's, I think, the crux of my insanity. When my life is unmanageable and I think someone else has to change for my life not to be unmanageable, I'm right back at step 1, and my life is completely unmanageable. If my well-being is dependent in any way on what anybody else is doing, that's over for me. So we had to find a new roommate. We met this really old guy who might have been 30, and he seemed to have a lot of money. And he was blowing through town. He needed a place to stay with his girlfriend. And we thought, well, he's got a lot of money. Maybe he'll pay the rent. And he did pay the rent. I'll give him the credit for that. But the reason that he had all that money was not only a probable alcoholic with these other issues, he was selling these other issues out of my house. And then things got really insane. Now I have hundreds of people coming through my house at any time. I'm kicking people off the bathroom floor in the morning so I can take a shower and go to work. I've got dozens of people sleeping on the basement floor, and I am livid. Why is my life like this? And it never occurred to me that I could live somewhere else. I mean that literally. It's not like I thought, oh, there's reasons why I can't move out. It never occurred to me because, again, someone else has to change for my life to not be unmanageable. I mean, I was crazy. I was stalking through the house with a shotgun, scaring people. I was a complete lunatic. And one of the other roommates, I got to be pretty good friends with him, and we drank a lot together. This is where I usually remember to say, I was with these guys doing a lot of what they were doing. If any substance had filled that hole in me, any substance that ever made me feel just okay around you, I would probably be dead. It just didn't do it for me, there, but for the grace of God. The only thing that came close to that was finding someone to obsess about. But anyway, this guy and I got to be really good friends, and what happened, he got hooked on the stuff the new guy was selling, and man, overnight, completely different person. And I was devastated. And I must have read about tough love somewhere, because I sat him down one day, these two 17-year-olds, and it's like, hey man, I love you and our friendship means a lot, but if you keep doing this stuff, we just can't be friends anymore. And he just looked me dead in the eye and he said, okay, bye. And I was devastated. How could he do that to me? I'm so grateful in Al-Anon to know today that nothing anybody else is doing has anything at all to do with doing it to me. But back then they were all doing it to me. How could they do that? And I was devastated. I really loved this guy, but I don't know if he's alive anymore. My girlfriend was coming to visit for the first time. And man, I'm a planner. I've got the whole weekend planned out. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of months, I think. She's been away at school. We're trying the long distance relationship, but I'm really looking forward to seeing her. And this is just a testament to the type of place I chose to live. She walked in the door, someone handed her a substance. She did what she always did. She ingested the substance without even, I don't think, asking what it was. And man, she's off to, I've got plans. Doesn't she know her plans for the evening now involve sitting in the corner looking at her hands for the next 8 to 10 hours? That's what she's going to be doing tonight. And I was devastated. How could she do that to me? And the crazy thing is, that was not the first nor the 100th time she had done something exactly like that. Again, that's my insanity. Every time someone does the exact same thing they've always done, I'm shocked. I can't believe it. They did it again. You know, so that was a final straw. I did have to break up with her. I'm not proud of this. I was scared of her. She was physically violent. And so like a real man, I waited until she was back in school in Tennessee and called her up, broke up with her. Not proud of that, but it's the truth. And she did what I expected. Her roommate was calling me saying she just punched through glass and she's bleeding all over the place. And she said she's going to hurt herself and you have to change your mind. And somehow I was able to say no. And I don't know how, because I never said no to anything. If I was going to get a pat on the back or just feel like a good guy, I put myself in insanely dangerous situations. I once put my name, not the money, but my name on a $10,000 bond for the friend of some like acquaintances that were hanging out of the house because none of them had a driver's license. They needed somebody with a driver's license to do that. The guy showed up, thank God. But I just thought, well, that's what a good person would do. No, that's what a complete idiot would do. And I did stuff like that all the time. So somehow I was able to say no. And she never had my phone number once I moved. I moved a lot in my late teens, early 20s. But she'd always call my parents at 3 in the morning, and they'd tell me the next day she's calling again. And I never talked to her again. And I talk a lot about her because she was probably an alcoholic, and I chose her. She didn't choose me. And I hated her when I came into Al-Anon. I thought she had ruined my view of love and relationships and women, and I truly hated her. And because of the power of these steps and my willingness in step 8 to make amends to her, even though I never got to make amends in step 9, that willingness is so powerful to me. When I found out that sometime in her early to mid-20s, I don't have the details, she did end up taking her own life. Because of that freedom, I had none of the resentment, but also none of that responsibility. Before a program, I would have said, oh, what could I have done? Maybe if I had taken one of those phone calls. And I wouldn't have seen the incredible arrogance and ego in me thinking that I could have had some control over this disease that she had no control over. It's just how I thought. When I found that out, I was free. I didn't hate her. I felt sorry for her. I felt sorry for her family. She was not a bad person. She had a horrible disease, I believe. And what an incredible freedom, even though I never got a chance to make amends to her. But, and I'm going to speed through this last part and get into recovery here real quick. I found out real quick I cannot survive without someone to obsess about, because now I'm back to sitting by myself wondering what's wrong with me. And so it was a matter of, I don't know, a month or two, I found my next volunteer hostage. Here she's one of hundreds of people coming in and out of the house at any time. And her older sister's drinking was destroying her home life. And we moved in together. She was still in high school. And I think she was 17, I was 18 at this point. Anyway, we moved in together and lived together for the next 4.5 years, and it was rough. Just two people that hated themselves and therefore weren't going to have any respect for someone who wanted to be in a relationship with them. It was rough. We had some good times. I mean, I hope I wouldn't have stayed that long if it was all terrible. I got a VW van, traveled all over the country months at a time, living on the road. I was trying so hard to be a hippie. A couple things wrong with that. First, it was the mid-90s. One thing wrong with that. But the main thing that didn't work out with that is that I found out that people that desperately need Al-Anon, like me, make really bad hippies. Control freak, schedule-oriented. This is my van. We're doing it my way. And I wanted to relax. The seeming ease and comfort of that lifestyle was so attractive to me. And I couldn't get it. I had the long hair and the red beard down to here and the VW van. I never got it. But we did have some good times, but mostly it was awful. But I stayed for the same reason I always stayed. In relationships, in friendships, in jobs. It's never going to get any better than this, so I better stick with what I've got. I don't deserve any better than this. I was convinced that she needed me, and I needed nothing more than to be needed. But more than anything, I think the abject terror of being alone was worse than the worst relationship you can imagine. So we were going to get married. We'd found a place up in Nederland, Colorado. We packed up everything. We were going to move up there and start our magical journey together. And what happened was I had met Annie. Annie and I had been working together for a couple of years and we'd gotten to be really good friends. And we just fell absolutely head over heels in a way that neither of us had ever experienced. And it was shocking. It was amazing, but fiance. I have a fiance. So I had to end that relationship, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it's so embarrassing to admit why it was so hard. I really didn't think she could live without me, and I hated myself, everything about myself. I don't know how you can have no self-esteem, no sense of self-worth, and convince yourself that you're so great that someone just can't live without you. But I had done that. She's fine, by the way. She has thanked me for ending that abomination of a relationship. But yeah, at the time, I just didn't think she was going to make it. So anyway, I ended that relationship. Oh yeah, we already had everything packed up. We were going to drive to Colorado, and we had a friend of ours who lived in Colorado who we were going to take back to Colorado when we went to get married. Well, now we've broken up, and if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So one morning, the three of us got up, packed everything we owned in that car, and drove in silence. I drove straight from Charlotte to Boulder. It took almost exactly 24 hours. I wouldn't let anybody else drive. I was out of my mind. If I'm going to do something difficult, I'm going to do it in the most insanely dangerous way to just get it over with. So I drove us there, dropped him off at home, dropped her off with some friends, gave her everything we owned. I was so full of guilt and shame. You take it all, take the car, everything. I had a duffel bag and a pillow with 22 years old, yeah. And I hopped on a Greyhound bus. That was a 44-hour ride back. That was fun. And Annie picked me up at like 3 in the morning at the bus station. And we moved in together because that's how I date, apparently. Annie does like me to say, and this is true, there was no infidelity. We moved in together before we went on our first date. That's actually true. She had like 3-4 years sober. So she was, she wants people to know she wasn't doing that stuff. But anyway, we moved in together, and it was just bliss. We were both on this pink cloud that we had never experienced before. Started going to open AA meetings with her, and obviously I love drunks, and I've never been around sober ones, and here's these young people enthusiastic about recovery, and going to these meetings and read the first 164 pages of her book, and think that's cool for people that need it. And then I heard her give her talk for the first time, and it's realized, man, she is one of those people that needs it. Because this person she's describing in her talk is not the woman I fell in love with. So I loved it, and we're just going, what happened was this relationship became my higher power. I didn't have one. I had rejected the dogma of my upbringing, but I hadn't replaced it. And this 100% became my higher power, and it didn't work out well for me. So we're going to visit a friend of mine, actually that normal original roommate, and his girlfriend in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we're out at a brewery, and Annie's assured me she's okay being around alcohol. She's sober 3-4 years. And they bring over some little shot glasses to see what pitcher we want to order. And Annie just reaches over and swigs a shot glass of beer. Now, I'm not here to tell her story, but she has given me permission to share. She had obviously stopped doing what she's got to do on a daily basis to maintain her sobriety, and she was ready to drink, and I had no idea. Now, she was expecting us to say, hey, it's about time, and like she says, then she would have switched over to a real drink. That was her plan. That is not the response she got. I was appalled. It had never, on my pink cloud, it had just never occurred to me, she could drink again. Never thought about that. My friends are just very confused. They know she's sober. And she slid that glass across the table, and she said there was no alcohol in that sip. I was just fooling around. And that was it. It's the most I ever saw her drink, and everything went to hell. And I was about to find out about some of the other symptoms of alcoholism, other than excessive drinking. I mean, that's a big one, maybe the biggest one, but in my experience, there's a lot of other symptoms, whether there's drinking or not, and I was about to find out about those, and I didn't understand them. What happened was she had a new sponsor. She's going back through the steps, and again, she's given me permission to share this. As an afterthought on her 5th step, she goes, I had a sip of beer a couple months ago. Her sponsor said, okay, well, you're going to need to change your sobriety date. And all I can tell you is the woman that came home from that meeting with her sponsor, I didn't recognize her. The woman I fell in love with loved AA and was so grateful for her sponsor and for the fellowship and program. This woman was angry and resentful and saying stuff like, if I'm going to change my sobriety date, or if I'm going to pick up a white chip, I'm going to go earn a white chip. That's a quote. And I was terrified. First of all, it was all my fault because I'm that powerful. If I hadn't taken her there, if I hadn't ordered that beer, this never would have happened. And now I'm obsessively thinking constantly, how am I going to walk on eggshells for the rest of my life? How am I going to manage her mood so she doesn't want to drink for the rest of my life? And everything about her changed. She's angry and resentful, and she's blaming me for stuff that has nothing to do with me. It's like complete personality change. She describes it as a long period of dry drunk. And if you live with a dry drunk, I don't need to describe it. And if you haven't, I can't really describe it. Without the drinking, we went through almost everything I've ever heard described in active alcoholism without the alcohol to blame it on. And that's just how it was. And I was terrified. I was obsessive. I was at the end of my rope. I thought this relationship was the only good thing that had ever happened to me. And if I couldn't have that, I was ready to check out. I mean, I kind of stood at my own jumping off place. I couldn't imagine life with the alcoholic, not like this, but I definitely couldn't imagine life without the alcoholic. And so that was it. I was absolutely insane. And a friend of hers in AA, I was describing this insanity to on the phone, and she did a very loving thing. She, as a member of AA, she said, have you heard about Al-Anon? And I'm sure I said something like, yeah, I've heard about that Al-Anon stuff. My view of Al-Anon came from the uninformed opinions of some members of AA. I'll just ignorance, but I did not think I needed to go to Al-Anon. I didn't want to go to Al-Anon. And again, she didn't push it, but as a member of AA who I respected, she said, I've been going, and it's really helping me out with some relationship stuff. You might want to give it a try. And that's it. And I'm so grateful for that gift of desperation. I was willing to try one more thing to prove that I'm too broken. Nothing's going to fix me. I'll try one more thing, and then that's it. And so sometime in June or July, I didn't write down the date, but June or July of 1999, I went into my first Al-Anon meeting. And I looked around that room, and I was somehow even more sure that I did not belong in Al-Anon. It really was about 95% women at that point, at that time. The median age appeared to be about 102. I was 23. I mean, everybody looks old when you're 23. I'm the old gray guy now. I'm more than twice 23 now, obviously. But yeah, I just thought there's just no way they can have anything for me. And I still had the red beard down to here and the long hair and probably wearing cut-off jeans, and they didn't care. They welcomed me with open arms and told me I was in the right place. Nobody ever asked if I was looking for the other meeting. I hear people do that sometimes. Please don't do that. I would have figured out eventually if I was looking for the other meeting. What I was looking for was a reason to not come back. I didn't want to be here. And they wouldn't give me that. And I'm so grateful for that. So I started coming. Man, I was going to meetings every day. Sometimes I was going to multiple meetings every day. And Annie and I did get married in January of 2000. And the first few years were really rough. Again, she's still in that dry drunk, and I have very little recovery. And they said, yeah, she's crazy, but so are you. And you can only do something about one side of that coin. And if you want to get better, you better find a way that can happen no matter what she's doing. And that was absolutely impossible to me. It sounded like the opposite of love. I'm supposed to be okay, no matter what she's doing. Absolute impossibility. But I think that's the crux of this program for me. And so we're going along, and I'm so grateful that I landed in a meeting where they were talking about the program. I love the fellowship. I love the meetings. But to me, it's the steps we took, which are suggested as a program. That's the program to me. And if I'm going to get better, I'm going to have to take these steps. And if I'm going to take these steps, I'm going to have to get a sponsor. I'm going to have to ask another man to help me. One of the hardest things I've ever done. In my arrogance and fear, I don't ask for help. I'll help you whether you want it or not, like I said, but I do not ask for help. So one of the best things I've ever done for myself is reaching out, asking this guy. He was at the club on Tuesdays every time I was there. And I just finally said, will you be my sponsor? And he said, I'm happy to work with you. But I got to tell you, I'm also a member of AA. And I didn't know that. In most of our meetings in Charlotte, we ask members of other anonymous fellowships to maintain their anonymity in Al-Anon just so we can keep the focus on the Al-Anon program. And he respected that. And I respected he respected that. I had no idea he was also in AA. Of course, at the time, I thought there were like 40 people in that room and I can still pick a drunk. I just love these people. But it would have been really awkward at that point to say, oh, well, never mind. So I said, I don't care. He said, let's get started. And I really thought I had taken step one. I knew my life was unmanageable. I'm spending every night of the week in a church. I swore I'd never step foot in a church. I'm going to all these meetings in churches. Something's unmanageable here. And I really thought I knew what powerless meant. I knew if she was going to drink, I couldn't stop it. I couldn't control anything else she was doing. Why would I think that I could stop that? There were times when her behavior was so erratic, I thought she was drinking. So I knew there was nothing I could do about that. He had me take a much deeper look at that. He had me write down everything in my life, every person, every outcome, every situation, every institution, whatever, anything I'm powerless over. But more importantly than that, he had me write down next to each one of those things, specifically how my life becomes unmanageable when I'm trying to control those things. And that's the connection I needed to see. My life's not unmanageable because I'm powerless over alcohol and alcoholism and alcoholics. I'll always be powerless. My life's only unmanageable when I'm trying to control that stuff. And that's the connection I needed to see because I'd lived my life with this delusion that, like I said, if I'm going to be okay, you have to be okay. Clearly. And you being okay means you're doing what I think you ought to be doing and not doing the stuff I think you shouldn't be doing. And if you're not getting what I'm trying to get across to you, if you're not applying my solution to what I think your problem is, truly the only reason I can imagine for that is that I haven't explained it well enough yet. Because obviously I love you and I have your best interests at heart, and so I will explain over and over and over in slightly different words this really basic, simple concept I'm trying to get through to you, usually about why your behavior is unacceptable, with this delusion. That's the only word for it, that one day you're going to get it, and then you're going to change, and then and only then is my life going to become manageable. And again, that's not just unmanageability, that's absolute insanity. So I needed to see that connection. My life only becomes unmanageable if I'm trying to control that stuff. And I really need to see the result, the dumpster fire that results when I'm trying to run the show for me to even think about this power greater than me. Came in with a lot of prejudice against the God of my upbringing, preconceived notions and contempt prior to investigation and all that stuff. And I knew that's not what you were telling me, but man, they got me so young. I had a really hard time letting go of that concept that I grew up with. And with my sponsor's help, I was able to finally make that decision. It's my only hope. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I've just seen that I can't do it. My only hope is that there's a power greater than me that could, doesn't even say would. And I wasn't quite arrogant enough to say whatever's keeping the planet spinning couldn't restore me to sanity. And so I was able to come to believe that. And our book, Paths to Recovery, says something like, having come to believe it naturally follows that we would make a decision to turn it. It did not at all naturally follow for me. I was terrified of making this decision to turn it over. And mostly I think I was just terrified of giving up control. And my sponsor had to explain to me over and over, I am never asked to give up control. I don't have any control to give up. If I think I have control to give up, I need to take another look at that first step. I'm being asked to give up the delusion that I can control anything and make the decision to turn all this stuff over to the care of a power greater than me that I choose to call God that can take care of that stuff. And so I was finally able to get on my knees, pray a third step prayer, and got launched into action. We've got a lot of different ways of doing inventory in Al-Anon. I don't think there's a wrong way or a right way. Definitely for me, the right way was the way my sponsor did it, because that's the experience that he had, and he wasn't about to change it. And so mine was really simple. It was a resentments list, a fears list, sex conduct list. And that's what I needed, that simplicity. And that just worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody else. But, that resentment list was a great way of tricking someone like me into taking my own inventory, because first, I get to write down all these horrible people that have ruined my life since I was in kindergarten. And then I get to write down all the horrible things they did to me. Then it gets a little more difficult. I got to look at specifically how have I been affected by that. And I get to see fear all over the place. Existence shot through with it. But then it gets real tough, because I got to turn the page and set all that aside and look at me and only me. First it suggested maybe I need to forgive them. Maybe they were just as sick as me. And maybe I should let go of that stuff not for their sake, because they don't care. Maybe I should let go of that stuff because I want to be happy, joyous, and free. But then I got to set it all aside and look at my behavior. Why did I consistently make decisions based on self that put me in those positions to be hurt? And this is painful, because this is where I get to see my defects of character in black and white. I get to see that the few things I thought were good about myself, taking care of everybody but myself, it's not only is that not an asset, that's a massive character defect. And it was never selfless. I was always trying to get something out of that, to be loved the way I wanted to be loved, or get someone to behave the way I wanted them to behave. So on down the line, with my sponsor's help, I was able to see in black and white my defects of character. And as painful as that was, that is really good news. Because if I still think it's them, I've got no hope. If I can see that it's my defects of character 100% that are blocking me from the sunlight of the Spirit, I can do something about that with the help of God and my sponsor and this program. And so immediately after doing that, sponsor sent me home. I spent some time in prayer and meditation to make sure I'd been as thorough as possible on the first 5 proposals. And I believed at the time that I had been, and I got on my knees and prayed a 7-step prayer and went to bed and got up the next day, and nothing had changed. And I don't know what I expected to happen, but called my sponsor. Nothing feels different. I think all these defects are still here. And he probably said something very loving like, did you bother to read the words that are in those steps? Because it says nothing about them being removed. It says that we're ready and we humbly ask God to do so. And a big part of that humility to me is that, like everything else, is not going to happen on my time. It's going to happen on God's time. It's probably not going to be the defect of character that's making me uncomfortable at the moment that gets removed next. Hopefully it'll be the one that's keeping me from being of maximum service to God and my fellows. But that readiness that the 6th step talks about, how do I know I'm ready? That is not some nebulous concept in me. That is my actions. I show my readiness through my action, and it's usually acting counter to how I want to. God has never removed my resentments if I keep doing for someone what they could be doing for themselves. It's just never happened. I can pray and pray and pray. God, I'm so resentful. I got to pray for courage to stop doing their job for them. And then, by showing my readiness through my action, the God of my understanding is able to remove that defect. God's never removed my self-centered fear. If I refuse to do stuff that terrifies me, like what I'm doing right now. And when I came into Al-Anon, I couldn't read a step sitting in a circle off a sheet of paper because my hands were shaking so bad. I was terrified of people. So when I got asked to speak at a meeting for the first time, man, I just thought, there's no way I can do this. But I had been told that I need to learn how to say no to a lot of things, but Al-Anon requests weren't on that list. So if I had said no, I wouldn't be here tonight. So I said yes, and I was terrified. And I got up there and probably spoke for 10 minutes with physically shaking, the podium's rattling, and nobody cared. But it got a little better, just a little better. And then when I got asked to speak at something a little bigger like this for the first time, and they give you like a year to think about that every day, I would think about it and have physical pain. And I'd say, God, just to me what this is self-centered fear. Please just remove that self-centered fear, that defect, so I can get up there and just tell in a general way what this program and the God of my understanding have done in my life. That's all. And I would pray that every time that fear came. And I can tell you when I got up behind that podium, I was just as terrified as I had been when I said yes. But the point is, the next time it got a little better. And then the time after that, it got a little better. I want God to remove the defect first. And then I'll do anything God wants me to do. And it's never worked in that order for me. I got to do what I don't want to do, act counter to my old ways of thinking. And by demonstrating my readiness, God is able and willing to remove that defect. Self-righteous indignation is still one of my favorites today. I'm much better, but it just feels good. God, I know that I'm supposed to love this person, but I can't because I just hate them. I hate them so much. And for how they're treating me or treating someone that I love. And, so God, you just go ahead and remove that self-righteous indignation, and then I'll go treat them. Nope. Go treat that person as a child of God, whether I want to or not, and God is able to remove that defect. I can't remove the defects, don't get me wrong. If I could do that, I wouldn't be here. But I got to participate. Got to show my readiness. So I got to make amends. I think every single person on my resentment list popped over to the 8-step list, because I had seen my part in step 5. And so, yeah, I got to look at that. And I'm so grateful for strong sponsorship at every step of the way, but particularly here. I would have messed this up so bad. I would have gone out looking for forgiveness or a pat on the back. And nope, we looked at everyone, the harm that was done, and mostly it was just acknowledging the harm. I mean, some were easy. If I stole it, pay it back. If I broke it, fix it. But most of them were just simply acknowledging my behavior was not acceptable, and I'm trying to change. I'm making a commitment to the person I've harmed, to myself, to the God of my understanding, to change, to amend. And I don't know if that was meaningful at all to any of the people I made amends to. Former managers at work and the principal and the teachers at that church school that I actually went back in to make these amends. I mean, couldn't believe I was able to do that. That's willingness straight from my higher power. But yeah, I don't know if that meant anything to them, but for me it was so powerful because I'm acknowledging something counter to what I've been telling myself and other people for all this time, that I am justified. What they did was worse. They started it. I never would have done what I did if they hadn't done what they did, and I'm acknowledging that is not the case. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm trying to change. And I was completely free. And not only was I free of the lingering guilt and shame, the resentment was gone. Because I still had some resentment at these people. And I didn't understand that. How does that work? When I make amends, my resentment's gone? I thought for my resentment to be gone, they had to come to me and beg my forgiveness. And then I might magnanimously bestow my forgiveness on them, and then I won't be resentful anymore. And that has never happened once, ever. So how does it work? When I make amends, my resentment is gone. And I heard a very well-known AA speaker who's not alive anymore, but so I'm just stealing this straight up because it was so powerful to me. He said, I would rather feel anything but guilt. Anything. Hate feeling guilty. So if I feel guilty for something I've done to you, I need that resentment about what you did to me close at hand, so that when I feel guilty, I can take that resentment and justify what I did and alleviate some of that guilt. When I take care of the guilt, clean up the wreckage of my past, my side of the street, resentment has no more purpose. And that's been my experience. I can go anywhere, go anything. That church school that I was talking about, I used to drive a block over if I had to drive by it, so I didn't see the building because of how it made me feel. That's a crazy way to live. I can go anywhere. I don't have to worry about running into anybody. Most of the people I made amends to, I've never seen again. And I don't particularly want to see them again, but I don't have to worry about seeing them again. And that's an incredible freedom. And I never have to carry around, excuse me, that combination of guilt and shame if I'm continuing to do inventory, and when I'm wrong, promptly admit it. I think that, to me, that's a lot more broad. 8 and 9 talk about harm. 10 says when we were wrong. I can go months without harming someone. I'm wrong about something at least once a day, whether it's at work or in my relationship or whatever. If I'm willing to promptly make amends when I am wrong, I never have to carry that stuff around again. And I got to do it promptly because I've still got that justifier in my head. The longer I wait, the less of a big deal it seems like. I just start telling myself they don't even remember that. What they did was worse. Don't worry about it. You can drop that. I think that's, for me, why it says promptly there. I didn't know how to pray when I came in. I grew up praying constantly. And my mom prayed all the time, and she was so full of fear. And I just thought, if that's what prayer gets you, what's the point? And we prayed for outcomes, and then I didn't get the outcome, and it was just more proof that I wasn't good enough and God hates me. And I'm so grateful for the simplicity of praying only for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out. That's it. That means I don't have to figure out what I need so I can get it. I don't have to figure out what you need so you can get it. I don't know what anybody needs. If I'm praying only for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out and doing the footwork in the direction that I feel led, that means that whatever the outcome is, even if it's the worst outcome I can imagine, I'm going to be okay. And that's a miracle. I mean, that kind of sums up the spiritual awakening that we're promised as the result of these steps. Whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. I'm going through a lot right now. I do not often feel like everything's going to be okay these days. Got family stuff, relationship stuff, job stuff. I mean, just everything hitting all at once. But I do believe. I don't have to feel it to believe it. I do believe that everything's going to be okay. And that's a miracle for somebody like me. Might not be a big deal to those normal people out there, but nothing was ever going to be okay before the program. And even brief glimpses of serenity were meaningless because I was always waiting for the next, catastrophe. So we're promised a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. And I have had that. And I'm going to finish here in a few minutes with a reading, very short reading, that sums up that spiritual awakening a lot more eloquently than I'm going to be okay. But having been given that, it suggests that I do a couple of simple things. Try to carry the message and practice these principles in all my affairs. Trying to carry the message in the room, to me, looks like I'm an active member of my home group. Love my home group. I sponsor guys. That is awesome. To take every painful, shameful thing that I've ever gone through that I swore I'd never tell anybody and get to share that with another guy who's going through that exact same thing and thinks he's completely alone, to turn that into a gift, what an incredible, that's just incredible to me. I think I mentioned I was an Al-Anon sponsor for several years. That was a huge part of my recovery early on. Recommend that to anybody. So that to me, that's pretty much just doing what I'm asked to do in the rooms and then carrying the message outside the rooms. I think the best way I can do that is to practice these principles in all my affairs. I'm on my best behavior in an Al-Anon meeting. It's not that it's not the real me. It's just the best me you're ever going to see anywhere. And so that means few nights a week, I'm a spiritual giant. And then somebody cuts me off in traffic on the way home, and that flies right out the window, And so I got to remember that I might be the only example of this program that somebody sees, and that's why I try to practice these principles in all my affairs. And a long timer when I came in, she's no longer with us, but she used to say one of the definitions of practice is to learn through repetition. And I like that. I'm never going to be perfect, but I'm practicing these principles, and I'm learning through this repetition. My life today, I'm not going to go through everything that's going on, but I did go back to school, got a little 2-year degree when I was like 28, got my foot in the door, got a career out of it. That's all Al-Anon. There is no way I didn't know how to turn on a computer. I never had one. And I got an IT degree. They had to show me, no, you're turning on the monitor. That's the computer. That's humiliation. All these 17, 18-year-olds at community college, and I'm already graying. I'm 28, 27 years old. But I did it because of Al-Anon. There's no way I could have done that. I have a wonderful relationship with my mom. I love her so much today. She's the most loving person I've ever met. And she's gotten a lot better. Al-Anon is not for her, and that's okay. She went to one meeting with me. Not for her. That's okay. I don't push it. But I do carry the message. And if I'm asked something, I've been able to carry this message. Our fifth tradition says that we offer comfort to families of alcoholics. It doesn't say to members of Al-Anon. We probably all have families of alcoholics, and my whole family is that. And I've got one sister I think is in recovery. But yeah, a whole crazy family. They all need a recovery, and that's none of my business, is my point. I have a wonderful relationship with them today, and that's all because of Al-Anon, especially a relationship with my mom. I had so much resentment about the way she loved me, and that's been gone for years. Annie did pick up that white chip. She's got 25 years this year, and I'm so grateful for her recovery and what I've learned from her program. And we went to a lot of conferences together and went to meetings together, and we had some good years and we had some really, really rough years. And back in, was it 2015, I think sorry, I'm dripping sweat here. We just both realized this isn't working. I think we're both trying to force a solution. I mean, we tried everything. We tried our best to practice these principles and to apply the traditions in our marriage, and it just wasn't working. So yeah, we made a mutual decision to separate and divorce, and it was agonizing. By far the most painful thing I've ever been through. I never thought Al-Anon failed me, but I certainly thought I failed Al-Anon. How am I going to go give a talk when I'm going through a divorce? And I'm so glad that I had people who'd gone through divorce in recovery who could remind me, look, Al-Anon doesn't always save relationships. Sometimes it does, and that's great. Sometimes relationships end, sometimes relationships change. But what Al-Anon does for me is it saved my life. And because we're both practicing these principles in all our affairs, not only were we able to get through that separation and divorce, as painful as it was, with dignity and grace, we are great friends today. I wouldn't trade that 17 years for anything. We were both exactly where we're supposed to be. I'm so grateful for that. I took a picture of that Straight Pepper Diet shirt and sent it to her. Asked her if she wanted a shirt. We're just great friends, and I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, but it's a shirt. Anyway, great shirt. I knew she would laugh at that. But everything in my life good today is a direct result of this program and this fellowship and the God of my understanding that Al-Anon allowed me to find. And all the bad stuff, the unmanageable stuff, that's a direct result of me trying to run the show. And so I'm going to keep coming back. I'm going to finish with a reading that really sums up, like I said, this spiritual awakening that we're promised. It's just really two lines. Some people call these the promises. There's no such thing as the promises. I know that. Nobody has to tell me that after I speak, which has happened. I try to make that really clear. I don't wish to engage in any controversy, so I'm going to call it page 269 and 270 from the Al-Anon Conference approved book, From Survival to Recovery. And it says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but if we willingly surrender ourselves to the spiritual discipline of these 12 steps, and that's a big if we willingly surrender ourselves to the spiritual discipline of these 12 steps, our lives will be transformed. And then it goes on to list the ways our lives will be transformed. And I think my favorite one just says something like, serenity and peace will have meaning to us as we allow our lives and the lives of those we love to flow day by day with God's ease, balance, and grace. My life had no ease, balance, or grace whatsoever when I got here. And the fact that promise and so many other, and look, anything in our literature that says, if you do this, this will happen to me, that's a promise. Our closing says, if you keep an open mind, you will find help. That's a promise. So that promise and so many more have come true in my life. It's truly a miracle for which I will be forever grateful. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Wow.